Hello, children. Well, today's lesson is going to be about straight lines. For example, once you have a table of values, once you have these tables of values, you can determine each point, okay? Because it's a set of order of pairs, x, y. So this minus 1, 3, this means that x is minus 1 and y is 3. And if we were to represent this dot in the graph, you will look for minus 1, here's minus 1, and 3, here 3. So you will determine these dots. In this case, 0, 4 is 0 for x, 4 for y. It will be 0, 4, this dot over here. 1, 5, x1, y5, x is 1, 5 is y. This one will be number 1, this one will be number 5, these dots. And now the pair 2, 6, x equals 2, y equals 6. So 2, 6 is over here. And once that you have these dots, you can use a ruler to draw a straight line that connects all these dots, okay? In general, when you have a straight line, you only need 2 dots. For example, if I were to have only these dots and this dot, if I use a straight line, I will still be considering these two values over here, okay? These two values, these two dots will be included in the straight line. So in general, you only need two dots to draw a straight line, but you want to do a table of values with more numbers, it's okay. Depends on the exercise. And once that you have determined all the dots, you draw the points on the graph, okay, as we did, and we draw a line through them, okay? You use a ruler to draw a straight line through them, and that's how you draw a straight line if you're given a table of values. Or sometimes you have to make your own table of values, okay? Depends on the exercise. Here it says equation in the form y equals mx plus 6 plus c, okay? Your 9 mathematics. The standard equation of a straight line in graph is this one, okay? If you ever see this expression, then what you're seeing is an equation of a straight line, for example. This is an equation of a straight line, okay? Why? Because you have x to the power of 1, you don't write it, but you have x, just 1x, multiplied by a number, m, that is represented by the letter m, that is the gradients or steepness of the graph, okay? And you have the value c, is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis, okay? So this will be the value c, this will be the value m. If I were to have another expression, for example, minus 1/2 x, then the value of the gradients will be minus 1/2, and the value of c will be 0, because since there's nothing here, it's like if you're adding a 0, okay? So the value of c is 0. In this case, since you have a value, number 1, then c is equals 1. Okay, c is the number that is not linked with the letter x, okay? M, the gradient or steepness, is linked to the x. And the other number, in this case number 1, is c, and is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis, the y-intercept. For example, let's see for an example. Let's say, for example, that I have y equals to minus 1 x plus 1. Okay, you have this equation, minus 1 x plus 1. Then the value c the value c, this is 1, that is 1, is represented over here, okay? So this is the value of c. C is 1. And then depending on the gradient or stepness is the graph, okay? Can be like this, like this, like this, like this. But always keep in mind that this is the value of c and is the y-intercept, okay? If I were to have, for example, y equals 4x minus 3, then this value minus 3 will be over here. This is the value c. So the equation, the straight line will cross this value, okay? It is like this. But the idea is that value, the number that is not linked with the letter x, that is a c, and is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. Again, if I have an equation, for example, like this, 2x minus 4, then this value over here, minus 4, will be this dot over here. This will be c. And the equation, the straight line will cross the y-axis at that point, okay? So that is why it says the y-intercept, okay? In this case, the gradient is the rise of a straight line, year 9 mathematics again, is the change in y values divided the change in x values, okay? For example, let's do this exercise, this example. Okay, you have this this straight line, y equals 1/3 x minus 2. You know it's a straight line because you have just 1x to the power of 1. Okay, you write the number 1. Okay, the power 1, but you know it's to the power of 1 because there are some equations that have an expression, for example, x to the power of 4. Okay, so this is not a straight line because the power of the x is different than 1. So, but here, since it's x to the power of 1, you write the power of 1, it's just x, then that's a straight line. So in this case, you have number c, the letter c, the value of c, equals minus 2. So the straight line will cross the y-axis at minus 2. Okay, so here's minus 2. And in this case, the gradients, it says m is the movement in y divided the movement in x. Okay, for example, m is 1/3. So you will move 1 up and 3 to the right. Okay, from where? From one of the points that you already know. In this case, for example, if c is minus 2, from this point you will move 1 up and 3 right. So that will be 1 up, so it will be minus 1, and 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3. So this will be the second dot. Okay, the first dot point will be minus 2, that is the value of c. Why you know it? Because you can identify it in the straight line equation, and then you can determine a second point, okay, by knowing how to move given the information of m. Okay, since m is 1/3, then you know you have to move 1 up and 3 to the right. 1 y up because in the movement up or down is y, and it's the movement in y, and left or right, in this case always you move always to the right, is the movement in x because x is in this direction, okay, the positive values of x. If I were to have, for example, an m equals minus 1/3, then you will move 1 down and 3 to the right. Okay, 1 down and 3 to the right. If my equation will be were to be 1/3 x minus 2, then since this is the value of c is the minus 2, then will be y-intercept the same value. But now you have to move 1 down, so you go to a minus 3, and you move 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3. So the second dot will be like this one. And then once you have 2 dots, you can use the ruler to draw a straight line. Okay? So by the this will be my straight line. We know that whenever you have 2 dots determines a straight line. You can have more dots if you want, but they have to be collinear. Okay, they have to be in the straight line. I can, if I'm trying to draw a straight line and I have one, for example, 1 dot here and another dot here, then and another one here, then there's not a straight line that can connect all 3 dots. Okay, they have to be aligned. That's how you draw a straight line. Okay, given the equation. If I give you an equation, you know that this value is c, and c is the value where y-intercepts are intercepts. Okay, and m gives you the movements that you have to do from one point. In this case, this will be your point. So that's why it's useful the gradient m. It lets you know how to move whenever you are in one point. And what is that we'll be doing with the straight lines? We will use equation to plot lines, okay? And then given a problem, we'll have to find the straight line equation to draw, to plot the graph, okay? Draw the graph, and then we will be answering some questions given that that equation. For example, use an equation to plot lines. Mr. Gill owns a boat hire company. If Mr. Gill makes a flat charge of $40 and then another 15 per hour of hire, you can find a formula for the total cost y after a hire time of x hours. Okay? It says the total cost equals the flat charge plus the total charge for all hours, because how much you're gonna be paying for the hire, okay, it depends on how many hours you will be hiring that boat. So if you pay 15 per hour, then that's many times x hour. The number of hours that you want to consider is your value x, because how much you will be paid depends on the number of hours that you will be hiring the boat. But you will be having a flat charge, okay? Here, so the total cost is the flat charge plus total charge for all hours, and in this case is y equals 40 plus 15 per hour multiply x hours. Okay, so whenever you change x, for example, for a 3, for a 4, for a 5, then for example, let's say you want to hire to know how you're going to pay for 5 hours. Then you will be replace x with 5 and do the math, and it will tell you how much you have to pay for 5 hours of service. Okay, let's continue with this. Now think about the total cost for a range of different hire times. 1 hour cost is 15 multiply 1 hour plus 40. 2 hour cost is 15 multiply 2 hours plus 40. 3 hour cost is 15 multiply 3 hours plus 40 equals 85. Okay, and so on. If you put these values in a table with some or more data, you can then plot a graph of the total cost against the number of hire hours. And here's the graph. For 1 hour, 55. Okay, here it says, so for one hour is 55. For 1 hour is 55. So here's the dots. For 2 hours is 70. For 2 hours It's 70. I think there is 70. Okay. So now you have two dots. Now, let's say, for example, for maximum listing for an hour that you don't want, you want to draw the graph, then you don't need all these values because just whenever you have just two values, with these two values, you can graph a straight line. Okay. So with only 2 points, you can draw a straight line. Okay. Since this is an example of an for example, everyday life example, everyday life. For example, this is a practical example, okay, of something that can happen to hire boats. Then generally you don't consider the negative values of x, okay, because you're not going to be hiring for -2 hours, okay. So keep that in mind. Whenever you are doing a straight line, you don't continue the straight line to the left, okay. This is wrong. Don't continue the straight line to the left, okay. Always to the right. In this case, you are considering, so this means 9 hours of work, and you have all the values, okay. So that is how you draw a straight graph of a straight line. You can do a table of all the values that you want, or simply by doing 2 points and then drawing with a ruler a straight line. That's okay. Always remember not to consider the negative values of x because you don't work negative hours. You only work positive hours. Okay. In this case, integer positive hours. So how do you read this graph? Okay, so now how do you read this graph? Well, okay. In the y-axis, it represents the total cost in money, and the x-axis, it represents the number of hours. So, for example, you want to say, okay, how much, without knowing the equation, okay, just by looking at the graph, you can say, okay, how much will it cost me for 2 hours of work? So I go up to a straight line, to the value, to a straight line. Then I go to the left, and here, for example, it says 70. In this case, it's 70 pesos because it's the total cost. So for 2 hours work, higher boats will be 70 pesos. For example, let's say, okay, I want to know for 3 hours work, okay, 3 hours hiring. You can go to the straight line up to this value, then you go to the left, and this will be 85. Okay, so for 3 hours of hiring the boat, it will cost me 85. Let's say, for example, okay, I have a budget of 150. Okay, I have a budget of 150. I go all up to the right to the straight line, and I want to know how over here up to these dots, then down, and this will say it says that this is 7 hours. 7 hours. So you can say, well, for $150, I can hire the boat for 7 hours and that means, let's say, for example, 7 hours and a few minutes, between 7 and 8 hours. Okay, less than 7 hours and a half. So that is how you can read a straight line, a graph straight line. Okay, so the cost for hiring Mr. boats, they can either give you the equation and then you can plot the graph. Okay, do the graph, and then after looking at the graph, you can make decision. For example, in this case, okay, how much will it cost me to hire the boat for 3 hours? You look in the graph, 85 pesos. How much will it cost me to, if I have a budget of $150, for how much time I can hire the boat? Okay, for 7 hours and 30 minutes, for example. Okay, between 7 and 8 hours. That is how you read a graph of a straight line in this case. But generally, any graph, whenever you want to read a graph, you can either move from the x up to the graph and then to the left to know the total cost, or if you want to find how many hours or the x values, you move from the y values to the graph and then to the x. In this case, the x means the number of hours and the y means the total cost of hiring this boat. Okay. The graph shows the total cost of the boat hire plotted on the vertical axis against the number of hire hours on the horizontal axis. Notice that all the points lie on a straight line because this is a straight line graph. The formula y equals 15x plus 40 tells you how the y coordinates of all points on the line are related to the x coordinates. This formula is called an equation of a line. Okay, this is the equation of a line. The following work examples show you how some more lines can be drawn from given equations. Okay, in this case, work example 1. Okay, read it. Okay, they give you an equation. You can construct a table of values for x and y and draw the line on a labeled pair of axes using integral values from -3 to 2, which are the integrals value números enteros. Okay, will be -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. And how do you determine the y values? Okay, let's say for example, okay, I want to find the y value for -3. So the equation will be y equals 2 multiply the value of x, this is -3 plus 3. Y equals 2 multiplied by -3 is -6 plus 3. Y equals 3. So this is the value of y, -3. In this case, let's say y equals 2 multiply -2, which is the value of x, plus 3. Y equals -4 plus 3. Y equals -1. So -1 is this value. If I want, for example, for number 1, because it asks me to use all the integral values from -3 to 2. Okay, so you will change x with -1, you will change x with 0, with 1, and with 2. You will do all the calculus. Okay, and then you will write the answers for those values of x in this table of values. Okay, and once that you have this table of values, all you have to do is to determine each point in the graph. Okay, so I will draw the first point, -3, -3. So -1, this is -3, -1. Sorry. -1, -2, here is -3, -3 in y, this is -3, then here is my first point. -2, -1, -2x, here is -2x, -1y, okay, so here's my other dots. And then with -1 is 1, here's my dots, this one is here, 1x, 5y, and 2x, 7y. 2x and 7y. Okay, and here you have the graph. Whenever they give you the equation, you do the table of values. Okay, and then you do the graph. Okay, do the work example number 2. Draw the line with the equation. They give you the equation and the values between -2 and 5 inclusive. Here are the integrals values. Okay, and do the graph. To draw a graph from its equation, draw up a table of values and fill in the x and y coordinates of at least 3 points, although you may be given more. Generally, with just 2 points, it's okay. But if they ask you to do with more values of x, then use all the value of x. Draw up and label your set of axes for the range y values you have worked out. Plot each point on the number plane. Draw a straight line to join the points. Use a ruler. Okay. Exercise 10.1. Make a table for x values from -3 to 3 for each of the following equations. plot the coordinate on separate pairs of axes and draw the lines. Okay, let's do exercise, for example, 10.1 F. Let's do this one. Okay, so the exercise says value of x from -3, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. And now you have to determine the y values for each of these x values. So for example, for the first this value, y equals -3, -2, -3 is 3, 3 minus 2, y equals 1. Then 4 minus 2, minus 2, minus 2, y equals 2, minus is positive, negative is positive, 2 minus 2, y equals 0. And so on with the rest values, the rest of the x values. Okay, here I have completed all the y values, okay? And now it's time to plot the graph. Okay, so we determine the dots. -3, 1, -3, 1 over here. -2, 0, -2, 0 over here. -1, -1 over here. 0, -2 over here. 1, -3 over here. 2, -4 here. And 3, -5 here. Okay, so I have all these dots. They are aligned, so I can use the ruler to draw a straight line. For example, this will be my straight line. This will be my straight line. And that's it. That's it. This is how you draw a straight line if you're given an equation. Okay. Another way of drawing a straight line would be like, okay, I know that c, value of c. So for example, like this. Okay, I know that the value of c equals -2 and m equals -1, and m is the movement of y divided the movements in x. Okay, so c -2, so -2 is over here. This is the value for -2, and then from these dots, okay, from these points, you have to move negative, so you have to move down. How much? One value in y, and since I don't have any value, any number here, this is 1 divided by 1, okay? So remember, whenever you have a value, you can express it as divided by 1. For example, 4 is 4 divided by 1, okay? Which we don't write divided by 1, but we know that all numbers can be divided by 1. So -1 means that you move one value of y down, one value down, down because it's negative, and then one value to the right in x. So this will be the other points. And if I were to draw the straight line, it will be the same, okay? Just that given 2 points, the c value and the steepness. you can draw the graph of a straight line. So it depends whether they tell you in the exercise, okay, draw a table with all the value of x that I'm considering, or simply they give you an equation and then you can draw the graph just by using the value of c. Remember, the value of c is the one that is not linked with the letter x. And in this case, the steepness is, since here's a minus, it's a -1, okay? It's one movement in y and one movement in x. And since it's negative, you move down, okay? It's the same, depends on the exercise. Okay, do exercise 10.1, do number 2, okay? You have different equations. Plot the lines on the same pair of axes, okay? And tell me what you notice about the lines, okay? Then draw this straight line, number 3. And then do exercise number 4, okay? And that's it. So exercise 10.1, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do them now in the class, okay? Well, have a nice week, children.